Silence. For the first time in 200 years, the Denari Empire sat in complete silence. High Sentinel Vorath stood on his bridge, surrounded by screens that showed nothing. Every sensor had failed. Every tracking system had gone dark. The detection grid that he had spent his life building was dead. His crew moved around him in panic. Officers shouted orders that no one could follow. Technicians tried desperately to restore systems that refused to respond. Throughout the fleet, the same scene repeated itself on every ship. They were blind. High Sentinel. Sub-Commander Illith rushed toward him, her face twisted with fear. We have lost contact with command. We have lost contact with the border stations. We have lost contact with everything. Vorath did not respond. He was staring at the anchor, watching the light that pulsed from its core. The ancient structure had awakened fully now. It was beautiful, terrible, alive in a way he could not understand. What did they do? Illith whispered. "Vor." Wrath finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost broken. They restored it. The anchor was never meant to help us watch the galaxy. It was meant to protect those who needed protection. The humans simply returned it to its original purpose. But without the grid, we cannot track anything. Ships could move through our space without us knowing. Enemies could what? Vorath interrupted. Attack us? We have the largest fleet in the galaxy. Invade our worlds? Our armies are stronger than any other civilizations. He turned to face her. The grid did not make us safe, Illith. It made us controlling. It let us watch the weak and starve them into submission. It let us become tyrants. Illith stared at him. You cannot be defending them. They are humans. They are the species we tried to kill slowly, Var said. And instead of dying, they found a way to survive. They moved through our territory without being detected. They carried supplies to their starving colonies. They refused to surrender, even when we gave them no hope. He looked back at the anchor. Archivist Kellen was right. The M-Scene did not choose humans by accident. They chose them because humans never stop running, never stop fighting, never stop helping those who need help. A communication signal broke through the static. It was weak, but clear enough to understand. The Nari fleet, this is the quiet step. Vorath recognized the voice. It was calm, steady, without anger or fear. The voice of someone who had already won and knew it. My name is Yunte Sun. I speak for the Ghost Runners. I speak for the human colonies you have blockaded. I speak for every family you tried to starve into surrender. The bridge fell completely silent. Every officer, every technician, every crew member stopped to listen. We did not come here to destroy you, Tae-sun continued. We came here to survive. The anchor is now doing what it was always meant to do. It is protecting those who need protection. Your detection grid is gone, and it will not return. Vorath closed his eyes. He had expected threats, demands, the arrogance and victory. Instead, he heard something else entirely. But we do not want war. We never wanted war. We only wanted to live. So I am offering you a choice. End the blockade. Let our colonies receive supplies. Allow humans and the Nari to travel the same space lanes in peace. Illith stepped forward. And if we refuse? There was a pause before Tae-sun responded. Then we will continue to be ghosts. We will slip through your territory without being seen. We will help our people survive no matter how hard you try to stop us. You cannot catch what you cannot detect. But we would rather build something new than fight forever. Vorath opened his eyes. He thought about his life, his career, everything he had believed about the Empire and its right to control the galaxy. Then he thought about the colonies, the children, the suffering that he had helped cause. "Sub-Commander," he said quietly. "Open a channel to command." Illith hesitated. "What are you going to say?" "I am going to recommend that we accept the offer." He turned to face her, and for the first time in years, there was something like peace in his expression. "The old ways are over, Illith. We can fight this change and lose slowly, or we can accept it and perhaps find something better." The message was sent. Across the Empire, debates began. Some demanded war. Some called for negotiation. The arguments lasted for weeks, but in the end, the choice was clear. The detection grid could not be restored. The Ghost Runners could not be stopped. And the blockade had become meaningless the moment the anchor awakened. 6 months later, the Nari and human ships flew side by side through the galaxy. Trade routes opened between worlds that had been enemies. Supplies flowed freely to colonies that had been dying. The anchor remained in the quiet zone, but it was no longer hidden. It had become a meeting place, a symbol of what was possible when old hatreds were set aside. Yuntei-san stood on the observation deck of a new station, built by humans and the Nari working together. Through the window, he could see ships from both species docking, departing, living in peace. Kang Hae-ri joined him, followed by Park Jun-woo. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. "There are reports from the far reach," Hae-ri said eventually. "A species called the Vorn. They're being threatened by raiders, cut off from trade. Their children are going hungry." Tae-san nodded slowly. "How far?" 3 weeks at standard speeds. "But with our drive system," she smiled, "we could be there in hours." Jun-woo was already heading toward the docking bay. "I'll get the quiet step ready." Tae-san took one last look at the peaceful scene before him. Then he followed his friends. Somewhere out there, someone needed help. Someone was scared and alone and hoping for rescue that might never come. That was what humans did. They ran, not away from danger. Toward it, toward the frightened, toward the hungry, toward anyone who needed a hand in the darkness. The unseen had understood that millions of years ago. They had given their gifts to a species that would never stop reaching out, never stop caring, never stop moving. No ID, no signal, no origin. Just a small ship, moving too fast to detect, carrying hope to those who had none. The Ghost Runners flew on. The quiet step shook as weapons fire exploded around it. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit. Alarms screamed from every speaker. But Yuntei-san kept his hand steady on the controls, guiding the ship through the chaos. 3 cruisers on our left, Kang Hae-ri shouted, her eyes locked on the navigation screens. 2 destroyers above. They're trying to box us in. I see them, Tae-san replied calmly. He pulled the ship into a sharp turn, sliding between 2 warships so close that he could see the Nari crew members through their windows. In the back of the cockpit, Park Jun-woo worked frantically at his station. His fingers flew across the controls, adjusting their stealth systems, keeping them 1 step ahead of the enemy sensors. "They're adapting," he warned. "Every time we dodge, they learn something new. We can't keep this up forever." Tae-san knew he was right. The Denari fleet was massive, and they were getting smarter with every passing second. Eventually, they would predict the ship's movements. Eventually, a shot would connect. But the anchor was close now. So close he could see its surface through the window. The ancient patterns seemed to glow brighter as they approached, as if the structure recognized them. "Jun-woo," Ta-san said. "The technology on our ship and that structure. They're connected, aren't they?" Jun-woo nodded without looking up from his work. "Same source. Same species. The unseen built both. Our ship uses their technology to hide. The anchor uses their technology to... I'm not sure. But it's powerful. More powerful than anything that the Nari have. Can we connect to it?" That made Junwoo pause. He turned to look at Taesun, his expression uncertain. Maybe. Our ship systems might be compatible. But we don't know what will happen. The anchor has been dormant for millions of years. Waking it up could be dangerous. More dangerous than letting our colonies starve? Hyrie asked quietly. No one had an answer to that. Taesun made his decision. Get us to the anchor. Junwoo, prepared to establish a connection. We didn't come this far to turn back now. The quiet step dove toward the ancient structure. Behind them, the Denari fleet unleashed everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams cut across the darkness. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers, but the ship kept moving, dodging, dancing through the destruction, like it knew where every shot would land. Before it was fired, they reached the anchor's surface and flew along it, searching for an entrance. Up close, the structure was even more incredible. The patterns on its surface moved constantly, forming shapes that seemed almost alive. Light pulsed through channels in the hull like blood through veins. There. Hyrie pointed to an opening in the structure's side. That looks like a docking port. Taesun guided the ship inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, everything changed. The sounds of battle disappeared. The shaking stopped. The alarms fell silent. It was as if they had entered another world entirely. The interior of the anchor was vast and beautiful. Curved walls stretched upward into darkness. Soft light glowed from every surface. And everywhere, there were symbols and patterns that matched the technology in their ship. We're inside, Junwoo whispered. His voice was filled with wonder. We're actually inside. The ship settled onto a platform that seemed designed exactly for vessels of their size. As the engines powered down, Taesun felt something strange. A presence. As if the anchor itself was aware of them. It knows we're here, Hyrie said. She was staring at a large screen that had activated on the wall ahead of them. Symbols scrolled across it, shifting and changing. Junwoo was already connecting his equipment to the ship's systems. The anchor is trying to communicate. It's using the same language as the technology on our ship. Give me a moment to translate. Minutes passed. Outside, the Denari fleet surrounded the anchor, but they did not fire. Perhaps they feared damaging the structure that gave them so much power. Finally, Junwoo looked up. His face was pale, but his eyes were bright with understanding. I know what the anchor does, he said. And I know why the Unseen built it. Taesun waited. The anchor isn't a weapon, Junwoo explained. It's a protector. The Unseen traveled the galaxy, finding young species, helping them survive. But they knew that one day they would leave. So they built the anchors to continue their work. Each anchor can shield entire regions of space, making ships invisible, blocking sensors, protecting civilizations from those who would harm them. The Denari reversed its function, Hyrie realized. They turned a shield into a surveillance system. Exactly. They found the anchor 200 years ago and figured out how to use its power. But they used it wrong. Instead of protecting, they controlled. Instead of hiding, they watched. Taesun stepped closer to the screen. Can we fix it? Can we restore the anchor to its original purpose? Junwoo nodded slowly. I think so. But it's more than that. The anchor is asking us a question. The symbols on the screen shifted one final time. And suddenly, Taesun understood them. The meaning flowed into his mind like water filling an empty cup. Who needs help? The question was simple, pure. It was the same question the Unseen had asked themselves millions of years ago. The same question that had driven them to build these structures, to protect young species, to give gifts to those who would carry on their mission. Taesun thought about the blockaded colonies, the children going hungry, the sick without medicine, the families watching the sky, hoping for rescue that might never come. He reached out and touched the screen. Information flowed from his mind into the anchor. Every colony, every settlement, every human world that the Thanari had cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The anchor received it all, and then it began to wake up. Light flooded through the structure. The patterns on the walls blazed with energy. A deep hum filled the air, growing louder and louder. Outside, Varth watched in horror as the anchor transformed. Energy pulsed outward from its core, spreading across the galaxy at impossible speeds. Every sensor in the detection grid flickered. Every tracking system screamed warnings, and then, one by one, they all went dark. The Thanari Empire had lost its eyes, and somewhere in the shadows, the Ghost Runners began to move. High Sentinel Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the quiet zone through the observation window. Behind him, 100 warships waited in perfect formation. Ahead, the anchor floated in the darkness like a sleeping giant. For 200 years, the Thanari had kept this place secret. The anchor was the source of their power. Every sensor in the detection grid drew its energy from this ancient structure. Every tracking system, every scanner, every probe that watched the galaxy was connected to a dot. Without the anchor, the Empire would be blind. High Sentinel, Sub-Commander Illith said, approaching with a datapad. The fleet is in position. All weapons are ready. If the entity appears, we can destroy it in seconds. Vorath did not turn around. Can we? Of course. Our firepower is designed to hit objects we can track, Vorath interrupted. This entity cannot be tracked. How do you destroy what you cannot see? Illith fell silent. She had no answer. A communication signal flashed on the main screen. Vorath recognized the source immediately. It was Archivist Kellen, calling from the archive station. Put him through, Vorath ordered. Kellen's face appeared on the screen. He was old, even by Thanari standards, with wrinkled skin and eyes that had seen too many centuries. But his mind was sharp, and his voice was steady. High Sentinel, I have completed my research. You need to hear what I have found. Vorath nodded. Speak. Kellen took a deep breath. The records I discovered were only the beginning. I have spent the last days searching through every archive we possess. What I found changes everything we know about our history. He touched a control, and images appeared on the screen. Ancient drawings. Old star maps. Records written in languages that had been dead for thousands of years. Before the Thanari Empire rose to power, the galaxy was ruled by another species. We called them the Unseen because no one ever saw them clearly. They moved too fast, appeared and disappeared too quickly. But they were real. And they were powerful beyond anything we have achieved. Vorath studied the images. What happened to them? They left, Kellen said simply. Millions of years ago, they decided to move on. Perhaps they went to another galaxy. Perhaps they ascended to another form of existence. No one knows. But before they left, they did something remarkable. He showed another image. It was the anchor, drawn by ancient hands. They built structures like this one throughout the galaxy. We found ours 200 years ago and used it to create the detection grid. But we did not understand its true purpose. The anchor was not built to help others watch and control. It was built to help others hide and protect. Illith stepped forward. That makes no sense. We use the anchor to track ships across the galaxy. We use it wrong, Kellen replied. We reversed its function. The Unseen designed the anchor to shield civilizations from those who would harm them. We turned it into a tool for surveillance and control. Vorath felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Why are you telling me this now? Kellen's expression grew serious. because the unseen did not simply leave their technology behind for anyone to find. They chose successors, species they believed were worthy of their gifts. And I have found evidence of who they chose. He showed one final image. It was a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. A planet covered in water and clouds. A planet that the Venari had classified as primitive and unimportant. Earth. Impossible, Illith said. Humans are weak. They have no advanced technology. They cannot even defend their colonies from our blockade. They have no advanced technology that we can see, Kellen corrected. But consider the evidence. The entity that has been appearing on our sensors moves like the old records describe the unseen moving. It is ship-sized, and it has been traveling between human colonies and the Nari space. Vorath turned slowly. His mind was racing. You are saying that humans have unseen technology. I am saying that humans were chosen by the unseen, Kellen replied. They were given gifts, knowledge, tools that we cannot detect because they were designed to be undetectable. The entity you are hunting is not a mystery. It is a human ship. Before anyone could respond, alarms began to sound across the fleet. Contact detected. A technician shouted, "The entity is here." It just appeared inside our defensive perimeter. Vorath rushed to the tactical display. The impossible dot was back, and this time it was moving directly toward the anchor. It weaved between warships like they were standing still. Weapons fired, but every shot missed. The entity was simply too fast, too unpredictable. All ships, concentrate fire. Illith ordered. Box it in. Give it nowhere to go. The fleet moved to surround the entity, but it slipped through every gap. It was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Then the sensors finally got a clear reading. Just for a moment. Just long enough to confirm what Kellen had said. Biological signatures. Human biological signatures. It's them, Vorath whispered. The humans? They're inside that ship. He watched the dot move closer to the anchor. Closer to the source of the Nari power. Closer to the secret the Empire had kept for 200 years. What do they want? Illith asked. Why would they come here? Vorath understood. It was so obvious now. The blockade. The starving colonies. The slow death the Empire had planned for humanity. They want to survive, he said. And they have realized that the anchor is connected to our detection grid. If they can reach it, if they can disable it. The grid goes dark, Illith finished. Every sensor in the Empire stops working. The blockade becomes meaningless. Vorath clenched his fists. He had spent his entire life building the detection grid. He had believed it made the Empire safe. He had believed nothing could threaten it. Now a species he had dismissed as primitive was about to destroy everything. Stop them, he ordered. Whatever it takes. Stop them. The fleet closed in around the anchor. But deep down, Vorath already knew the truth. He was trying to catch ghosts, and ghosts could not be caught. The ship was called the Quiet Steppe, and it was smaller than most cargo vessels in the galaxy. From the outside, it looked like nothing special. Old hull plates. Faded paint. The kind of ship that traders used to move goods between poor colonies. But the Quiet Steppe was not a normal ship. And the people inside it were not normal traders. Yun Tae-sun sat in the pilot's chair, watching the stars through the main window. He was a tall man with tired eyes and steady hands. He had been flying ships since he was 16 years old. And he had learned long ago that the galaxy was not a kind place. Cargo is secured, a voice said behind him. Tae-sun turned to see Park Jun-woo climbing up from the lower deck. Jun-woo was shorter than Tae-sun, with quick fingers and a mind that never stopped working. He was the engineer, the hacker, and the reason their ship could do impossible things. What are we carrying this time? Tae-sun asked. medical supplies, food packs, water filters. Junwoo sat down at his station and began checking the systems. Enough to keep the Outer Ring colony alive for another 3 months. Tae-san nodded slowly. The Outer Ring was one of the human colonies that the Thanari Empire had blockaded. No ships were allowed in or out. No supplies could reach them through normal channels. The Empire called it a containment measure, a way to prevent human expansion. In truth, it was slow death. The Thanari had decided that humans were growing too fast, spreading too far, becoming too strong. Rather than fight a direct war, they had chosen to starve humanity into submission. Cut off the colonies. Let them wither. Wait for them to beg for mercy. But humans did not beg. They ran. "Course is plotted," said Kang Hei-ri as she entered the cockpit. She was the navigator, a woman with sharp eyes and a gift for seeing paths that others could not imagine. "We'll go through the quiet zone. The Thanari don't patrol there." Tae-san frowned. "The quiet zone is dangerous. Even we don't know what's in there." "That's exactly why the Thanari avoid it," Hei-ri replied. She sat down at her station and pulled up a map of the galaxy. Their detection grid doesn't work well in that region. Too much interference. If we go through, we can reach the Outer Ring without being seen. Junwoo looked up from his work. "She's right. I've been studying the Thanari sensors for years. The quiet zone is a blind spot. They guard the borders, but they don't go inside." Tae-san considered this. They had made dozens of runs through Thanari space, delivering supplies to blockaded colonies. Each time they had escaped by being faster and smarter than the Empire. But each time, the risk grew greater. The Thanari were learning, adapting, getting closer to catching them. "How do we move so fast?" Tae-san asked. It was not really a question. He knew the answer, but sometimes he needed to hear it again, to remind himself why they kept taking these risks. Junwoo smiled. "You know the story. Tell me anyway." Junwoo leaned back in his chair. 300 years ago, humans were still exploring their own solar system. They landed on their moon and found something buried beneath the surface. Something old. Something that did not belong there. "The gift," Hei-ri said softly. "The gift," Junwoo agreed. Technology from a species that had vanished millions of years before. Humans studied it for generations. Most of it they couldn't understand. But some of it they learned to use. The drive system in this ship comes from that technology. It doesn't work like normal faster-than-light travel. It moves through dimensions that other species can't even detect. Tae-san looked at his hands on the controls. "And that's why the Thanari can't track us. Their entire detection grid is based on tracking normal space," Junwoo explained. "When we jump, we don't travel through normal space. We slip between the cracks. We become invisible. We become ghosts," Hei-ri added. That was what they called themselves. Ghost runners. Humans who move through the galaxy like shadows, bringing hope to dying colonies, slipping past the greatest empire the stars had ever known. There were hundreds of ghost runners now, maybe thousands. No one knew the exact number because that was the point. They didn't organize. They didn't communicate through normal channels. They simply appeared where they were needed, delivered what they carried, and vanished before anyone could stop them. The Thanari called them a myth, a rumor, an impossibility. But the starving colonies knew the truth. When all hope seemed lost, when death seemed certain, a small ship would appear from nowhere. Supplies would be delivered, and then the ship would be gone, leaving no trace except the lives it had saved. "Preparing for jump," Hei-ri announced. "Everyone's secure." Tae-san gripped the controls. The jump was always the strangest part. For a moment, the ship existed everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Colors that had no names swirled outside the windows. Sounds that had no source echoed through the hold on. Then it was over. They emerged in the quiet zone, and immediately, Tayson knew something was wrong. "What is that?" he whispered. Through the window, he could see ships. Hundreds of ships. A massive Denari fleet, arranged in perfect formation, weapons pointed outward. They were guarding something. Behind the fleet, floating in the darkness of space, was a structure unlike anything Tayson had ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Its surface was covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move. Light pulsed from its core like a heartbeat. "That's not possible," Junwoo said. He was staring at his screens, his face pale. "The Denari aren't supposed to be here. No one is supposed to be here." Hairi's hands flew across her controls. "They're not scanning for us. Their sensors are focused on the structure. Whatever that thing is, they're afraid of it." Tayson studied the massive object. Something about it felt familiar. The patterns on its surface, the way the light moved through its core. It reminded him of the technology in his own ship. "What is that thing?" he asked. Junwoo ran analysis after analysis. Finally, he looked up, his expression a mix of wonder and fear. "I think," he said slowly, "that we just found the source. The same species that left the gift on Earth's moon? They built that structure, and the Denari have been hiding it for centuries." Tayson made a decision. They had come here to deliver supplies. But some discoveries were too important to ignore. "Can you get closer without being detected?" he asked Hairi. She studied the fleet formation. "Maybe, but if we're caught—" "We won't be caught," Tayson said. "We never are." He pushed the controls forward. The quiet step moved silently through space, slipping between the massive warships like a whisper in the dark. They were ghost runners, and they had just found the biggest secret in the galaxy. The alarm had been ringing for 3 minutes before High Sentinel Vorath finally believed what he was seeing. He stood in the center of the detection hub, surrounded by screens that showed every corner of Denari space. For 200 years, his people had watched the galaxy from this station. They had mapped every planet, tracked every ship, and recorded every signal. Nothing moved without the Empire knowing about it. But something was moving now, and the Empire had no idea what it was. "Show me the readings again," Vorath said. His voice was calm, but his 4 eyes were fixed on the main display with intense focus. The technician beside him touched the controls. Numbers and images filled the screen. A small dot appeared on one side of the map, then vanished. It appeared again on the other side, thousands of light years away. Then it was gone once more. "This is impossible," Sub-Commander Illith said. She stood behind Vorath, her arms crossed over her chest. "Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can move that fast." "And yet something did," Vorath replied. He walked closer to the screen. The detection grid was his life's work. He had spent 40 years improving it, expanding it, making it perfect. Every ship in the known galaxy had an identification code. Every civilization sent signals that the grid could read. Every object had an origin point that could be traced. This thing had none of those. No ID, no signal, no origin. It simply appeared, moved faster than light itself, and disappeared before any probe could reach it. "How many times has this happened?" Vorath asked. The technician checked the logs. 47 times in the last cycle, High Sentinel. Each appearance lasts less than 2 seconds. By the time our systems lock on, the object is already gone. Illith made a sound of frustration. "It must be a glitch, a malfunction in the sensors. We should run a full diagnostic before we waste resources chasing ghosts." Vorath did not respond. He was studying the pattern of appearances. The dot seemed random at first, but he had been doing this work for too long to believe in randomness. There was always a pattern, always a purpose. The object is small, he said quietly, ship-sized, and it keeps appearing near our border territories. Many ships travel near the borders, Ilith said. That proves nothing. Many ships have identification codes, Vorith replied. Many ships send signals. Many ships can be tracked. He turned to face her. This one cannot. That alone makes it worth investigating. He gave orders to every patrol ship in the sector. Report any anomaly, any strange reading, any unexplained movement. The Thanari Empire had not become the most powerful civilization in the galaxy by ignoring mysteries. While the fleet began its search, Vareth received an unexpected message. It came from the archive station, where the Empire kept its oldest records. The sender was Archivist Kellen, an elderly scholar who had spent his entire life studying history. High Sentinel, the message began. I have been monitoring the detection reports. The readings you are seeing are not new. I have found similar records in our oldest archives. Records from before the Empire's expansion. Voreth felt a chill run through his body. The time before the expansion was rarely discussed. It was a dark period, when the Thanari were weak and other powers controlled the galaxy. He opened the attached files. They were old, the data formats barely compatible with modern systems. But the readings were clear. Centuries ago, before the Thanari built their detection grid, there had been reports of objects moving impossibly fast. Objects that appeared and vanished like shadows. Objects that could not be tracked, identified, or caught. The ancient Thanari had called them the unseen. Myths, Ilith said when Vareth showed her the files. Old stories told by primitive ancestors who did not understand what they were seeing. Perhaps, Vareth said, or perhaps our ancestors saw something real. Something that has returned. Before Ilith could argue, another alarm sounded. The object had appeared again. But this time, something was different. It's not moving, the technician said, his voice shaking. High Sentinel, the object has stopped. Its holding position. Voreth rushed to the screen. The dot was there, clear and bright. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The longest the object had ever stayed visible. Get me a full scan, Voreth ordered. Everything. Size, composition, energy signatures. Everything. The scanners worked frantically. Data poured across the screen. The object was indeed ship-sized, roughly 40 meters long. Its composition was unknown, made of materials the sensors could not identify. Its energy signature was unlike anything in the Thanari. Database dot, and then came the trajectory reading. Vareth stared at the screen. The object was moving again, but slowly this time. Almost as if it wanted to be seen. And it was heading in a very specific direction. The quiet zone, Ilith whispered. Her usual skepticism was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. The quiet zone was a region of space that the Empire had sealed off 200 years ago. No ships were allowed to enter. No signals were allowed to leave. It was guarded by a permanent fleet, but no one ever talked about what they were guarding. Vareth knew. He was one of the few who did. Deep in the quiet zone, there was a structure. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something the Thanari had found long ago and used to build their entire detection grid. They called it the Anchor. And it was the source of all their power. If this unknown object reached the Anchor, everything could change. Send a message to command, Voreth said. His voice was hard now, all doubt gone. Tell them I am taking the primary fleet to the quiet zone. Tell them the impossible has happened. Ilith looked at him. What has happened, High Sentinel? Vareth watched the dot move across the screen. heading toward the Empire's greatest secret. "Something we cannot detect has found something we tried to hide," he said, "and I intend to stop it before it's too late." He left the detection hub and headed for his ship. Behind him, the screens continued to track the mysterious object. It moved through space like a ghost, leaving no trail, making no sound, sending no signal. The Thanari Empire had spent 2 centuries believing they could see everything. They were about to learn how wrong they were.